here think your career can be threatened by AI? Nobody. Oh, a couple people only. 3 people. Edu, yeah? Will be threatened by AI? Just 4 people, apparently. So to discuss that, we put together a panel of experts. Let's see what they think. Vicente Silveira, Bay Brazil chairman, will moderate.
Inviting our panelists, right? So I want to get Arnaldo. Can you please come over? And Eder, please come over. Give them an applause. You guys have a seat. Doing a little bit of an introduction. I think this is a great topic for us to discuss, especially in this place here. I actually used to work for LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is all about careers and the future of work, the present and the future. And I think AI is probably one of the technologies that has brought a lot of discussion in terms of what this future is going to look like. Just in terms of introducing our panelists, Arnaldo is a director of AI and partnerships at Intel. And he's developing Intel's artificial intelligence ecosystem. And prior to that, he used to work at NVIDIA for 7 years in machine learning as well. And then Eder is a research scientist in machine learning at Toyota Research Institute. So lots of auto companies are here in the Valley because of the way machine learning and artificial intelligence is changing transportation. So they have a lot of research centers. Toyota is one of them. And he's working on deep learning for autonomous vehicles or self-driving cars. And before that, he contributed to a very popular deep learning library called Keras. A lot of people there in the field use that, so it's great work. And he's from Maranhão, right? Excellent. Okay, the image here, I think some of you guys may have seen that. Who knows what that is? Google's car, Google's self-driving car, exactly. It's actually one of the first, they're still iterating on that. They did this one that looked like a little cartoon. Everybody's looking at it. And with that image came this idea that, maybe work in the future will be different. Maybe some professions, like drivers, may no longer be in need, right? And it made us think, right? What about the role of technology innovation into how people work or find meaning for their lives? So I kind of went back a little bit, and I wanted to see, maybe this is I don't know how well you can see, but this is a picture from 60 years before, right? Everybody's looking at something there. Can you see what that is? It is an ATM. It's actually the first ATM. In 1967, Barclays Bank in the UK put the first ATM out, right? Because this guy that worked at Barclays Bank had this idea that he's like, well, my customers want to get money at night or over the weekend. There's no way to do that. So they put the ATM out, and it kind of looked like this. It was actually super interesting because you had to have this piece of paper that was a little bit radioactive to make it work. So it's all kinds of interesting technology. And the prediction was that tellers at banks would basically disappear, right? Because, this basically replaces what the teller does, right? Which is essentially to hand out cash, right? So, interestingly, and this chart actually shows that, here in 1967, you have the number of ATMs, which is the plot at the bottom, and then you have the number of tellers. And surprisingly, the number of tellers actually increased, right? Even when you correct for the market, in terms of the average median job on the market, how it's growing. So the number of tellers in banks actually increased. So how's that even possible? So one thing that happened was that it suddenly became a lot cheaper to actually open up a new branch. So banks then started to opening more branches than they were doing before, and they needed more people to work on them. And people actually started to have different roles in the banks. So they're now starting to sell other products that the bank may have. So maybe selling loans and things of that nature. So this is, I think it's an interesting example when, maybe a new technology doesn't necessarily eliminate all the jobs related to that. But then there's also counterexamples to that. And this is I think a very interesting map that shows the most common job, and the animation is actually walking us from 1978 to 2014, right? And you can see that, and when it loops around, that in 1978 and the beginning of the 80s, secretaries or executive assistants were, one of the most common professions. And they basically disappeared from the map as one of the most common professions. So what happened there? As technology entered into the office, as people had access to computers, emails, right? Suddenly became a lot easier to do that, and we didn't need as many of those professionals. As you can see towards the end, truck driver becomes one of the most popular jobs in the United States, actually extremely popular in Brazil as well. And I think someone actually asked a question before around this. This is actually a great report. I highly recommend. LinkedIn has a team of economists that actually issues a monthly report on the state of the workforce, right? And most recent one was showing that in the space of 3 years, right, the job market is shifting a lot towards jobs that are related to data, related to technology, right? Even more than it was doing before that. So like the shortage, for example, for data science professionals is essentially extreme. So it's like 30,000 people just in New York City, or 30,000 positions that could be filled even ahead of the Bay Area. So, and I'm going to close with this, which is saying, I think it's unclear to me at this point, like whether we're going left or right here, right? So on the right side is actually kind of Mercedes' vision of what the truck driver will look like. So it's like this businessman or business person, and it's kind of like preparing. He essentially becomes a back office type person, and the car's just doing all the driving, maybe pick it up when he gets into the city. The left side is actually a picture from the caminhoneiros greve, or the strike of the truck drivers in Brazil. It's a very, dark scene in which you can see how things can be very disruptive. So I want to kind of tap into these guys' expertise and really kind of, see which way we're going. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to get started, and you guys can start thinking about what you would like to know. So the first question I have for you guys is, do you think that we're going to have an actual decrease in jobs as AI, machine learning, gets more prevalent? No change, it's just going to be different jobs, or we can even have an increase in more opportunity for people? How do you feel about that? And maybe we can start with Arnaldo and move to Eder.
First of all, thanks for the organization for inviting me. It's the first time in this event. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Margarese and the Bay Brazil team. So the way I think about this, and I tend to agree with people who say that AI may be the fourth industrial revolution. So if we consider that, we can go back in time and learn a lot from the previous revolutions, right? On the first industrial revolution, we have mechanization of the industry. On the second industrial revolution, we have the mass production. On the third one, we came to the digital era with computers, processors, computers, internet, mobile devices. So maybe answering your question, on the short term, we may have a net reduce of jobs because of this new industrial revolution. That happened in the past, for example, right? When steam machines started went to the textile industry, there was a lot of massive layoffs on that industry. England reached, I believe, 40% unemployment at that time. But over time, the tendency is for us to have a net positive effect. If we evaluate all the other three industrial revolutions, that's exactly what happened, right? In the short term, it substituted some of the basic jobs, but on the long term, it affected so many different vertical industries that the end result, the final impact, is definitely positive. So I expect long term, we see a net increase on jobs directly or indirectly related to AI. Directly because, as you showed, there's a lack of technical knowledge to develop AI technology. We need more data engineers to help manage data. Data is, as they say, is the new oil. It's basically what's driving the AI revolution today. We need more data scientists to be able to take intelligence out of this data using AI as a tool. We need more AI developers to be able to continue evolve the technology. So these are the direct jobs. And indirectly, as AI is kind of a horizontal technology that will touch and transform many different verticals, over time we'll need more and more professionals that know how to use AI. I see AI as an opportunity to augment human capabilities in many sense, as you showed an example of the ATMs. Basically, ATMs augmented the capability of the tellers, they didn't actually substitute them. So that's my vision on the long term.
All right. First of all, thanks for having me. And at first, when I usually get that kind of question, my answer is that it's actually very similar. And then recently, I've been trying to to think further, because you ask for a data scientist, like all of us here, I'm assuming. What would you think will be the changes of the technology that we're working so hard to do? And obviously, we think forward and say, like, well, and in the long term, it's going to be, and I believe that it's going to be much better for everybody. Nobody wants to work on a technology that is not going to be great. I just want to perhaps raise a little bit of awareness that in the short term, the change can be something that might demand more attention than we are perhaps thinking right now. And I don't know, it's interesting that you think about the consequences on the short term as well, because I don't believe that the regular education, especially not in Brazil and the city where I grew up, where you don't think like here in California, which is, 1 year and 1 year and a half, and then you change your job. That sounds fine. It's about right. It's about how much you change during your lifetime. People want to have jobs and stop thinking about their jobs and then worry about their family and have like that status quo where they can safely go with. And perhaps I would say that it's interesting. It's important that at least we raise awareness enough that changes can happen, and you should be willing to adapt, because that's the word, that's society. Nobody's going to stop, and so shouldn't you? You know. So the same way, it's in our field, we are always worried about change all the time. So we're always going to conferences, always reading new articles, and always trying to catch up with this fast-paced technology. But sometimes we work in problems where not everybody else has this willingness to change. So I'd say that, yes, I agree that in the long term, things will definitely get much better. But I want to think right now that perhaps you're not doing the best job ever to raise awareness about the people that can possibly be affected, on how they must be aware and willing to adapt. Obviously, I don't want to scare anybody. I wouldn't say, hey, truck drivers, here am I, working on self-driving cars, watch out, start studies. No, it's not this. But also not be like, oh, I'm not a politician, that's not my job. I want to be more aware on how things can change, and what can I do to perhaps prepare people better to receive the change.
That's great. Maybe one more question, then we'll go to the audience. So, what have you seen in AI or machine learning that you feel like, oh, this is interesting? Nobody's, or very little people are paying attention to this, but it may actually have a big impact in people's jobs or careers. And maybe you can start.
Yeah. So the reason was, for me, here's the full story. I went to visit our office in Cambridge, and in there I saw one of my PhD colleagues, right? And then I was telling him, so what are you doing? You're working on this machine learning company. It's a data science consulting firm. So his job is pretty nice, and he's from India, right? And then he was telling me, oh, one of the things that we are solving is you have this industrial process, and then this company has something like more than 1,000 people working, and their job is, look at this image. If you think there is a problem on this image taken from a part of our industrial process, you say, oh, this something happened on this process here, that this picture is relevant. And essentially, these people were labeling data that then you can just train a simple neural network from 2012 to do the same classification. The company told them, yeah, our plan is to keep 30 of them. And then he was like, man, it's 1,000 people from my home country. What are they gonna do? But it's such a low-hanging fruit and such a big return for the company. He can just say, If I don't do, somebody else is going to do, right? And so that's what made me, whoa, perhaps should we be thinking more about this? Are we just, because obviously if we just are willing to make our process more efficient, that's what we all want. And I think society should be more efficient. And I don't think that those people will be happy to spend the rest of their life just looking at those pictures and say good or bad either. But it should be we should make the transition a bit smoother, I'd say. I still don't know, but I was happy to come talk, and perhaps somebody will have better ideas than I do right now about this. So,
yeah, for me, the biggest impact I saw on AI and the transformation that is happening even inside the computer industry specifically was the paradigm shift that is ongoing right now. Right, in the past, we created software depending on software developers, software engineers. So it was basically a rule-based model, right? You have a problem to solve, you go to an expert in that field, he helps you build the rule, helps you understand the rules that govern that specific area, right? And then you write your software based on those rules to be able to solve that specific problem. That helped us until here. But there are some problems that are very complicated, and driving a car is one of those, right? There's no way a human being can write enough number of rules to be able to predict all the possibilities that can happen when a computer is driving a car. And that's when I realized that back in 2013 is when I really saw the transformation that was ongoing. We're shifting now to a world where software will write software. And that's basically because they will learn from data. So data is key, as we all know. And when I realized that, I saw that that's when the revolution is really happening right now. It's more than just creating some type of artificial intelligence, but it's really about transforming the computer industry in general, right? It's more important. In the past, who wins is how I like to put it. The companies who won in technology were the ones with the best software developers. Now, not necessarily. The companies that will win in this new world where software writes software based and learn based from data are the companies who has the most or the best type of data. So that's a big transition that we see right now. That's why companies like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Amazon are investing so much in AI. They hold a lot of data, and they are driving this transformation that's ongoing right now. When I realized that back then, that's when I figured out I want to move into AI.
That's great. Let's see if we have any questions in the audience.
Hi. I understand that you both are Brazilians, right? Yeah. And Vicente, of course. I'm really scared about how fast China is running on this journey, especially because the privacy concerns in China are different than in the US, Europe, and Brazil. I believe you understood me. And the amount of data is absolutely key for these technologies. And I totally believe that will change absolutely everything. I raise my hand because this technology can kill my company or is an opportunity to grow 50 times. And you have to anticipate what will happen. My main concern and my question, as a country, Brazil, I believe we are not prepared. Public sector, governance, and as a society, we are not ready for this to face the challenge. What you suggest for is a very broad question. What do you suggest for us as Brazil, as a nation, as a society? What should we do to prepare ourselves to this big challenge?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah, definitely we see in the AI market today polarization and competition especially between US and China, right? And China's, in this sense, as you mentioned, has a kind of a competitive advantage on the lower importance to privacy than other countries. But putting Brazil there, yeah, I agree, Brazil is a little bit behind. And this paradigm shift that I just mentioned gives a fantastic opportunity for Brazil. It's a huge country, almost 200 million people, generating a lot of data, right? As I mentioned, data is key. So we have a huge opportunity right now in front of us to improve our competitive advantage as a country in this space. But I think what we need to do, first of all, is educating everyone around AI. And that's, although I'm here in the Silicon Valley, I have the personal interest in educating more people in Brazil about AI. Not only in the computer or in the technology industry specifically, but in general, as it's going to transform basically all industries that we're working on. So I think the number one thing we should think about right now is educating as most people as we can. And using AI as a tool to educate people as well. Why not have virtual professors, virtual teachers to help us educate the masses around AI? And educating the next generations as well. They are the ones who will inherit this new world, right? So, yes, and when I talk about education, once we educate the population, this the ripple effect will go all the way up to government, right? You need a population that is educated on this to be able to demand from government actions around this. So data protection laws and privacy laws are very important to protect people's rights, but also to give us a chance to tap into this treasure, right? All the data that is 200 million people is generating, that's a treasure that we have, and we should definitely tap into that. So I believe number one thing for Brazil right now is education around AI.
Yeah, so a key word that I think that you used was fear there in the question. And I think there is a big correlation, again, between fear and education too, because if you think about that, a very large part of our population is willing to go in a direction where educated people in America are going, which is they want guns back, while here people are trying to make harder to get them. The same people you vote yes for less privacy. They'll say, yeah, WhatsApp shouldn't be private. Wait, what do you mean? Those cameras right there are not sending the images to the police? So if somebody does something bad here in this room, the police won't know? No, yes, no privacy, security, fear. That's what is going on. And if you want to change this slider between fear and like confidence, it's mostly education. It's knowing what you can do. Once you know what you can do and how you can defend yourself, other than just fighting back, that's when you're truly ready. You're truly ready to attack a problem in the proper way. And I believe that right now, a big part of the policy in Brazil is just stepping on that. We got onto a point where the population has a lot of fear, aka the population is very uneducated. They have no notion about what are the correlations between safe states and safe governance and policies. And it's just go down. And nobody talks about attacking the problem. People talk about like putting more police or killing criminals or whatever. While the main problem is not being attacked. So why we are not facing first, honing down the first principles of the problems that we have and attacking them on the true. And I don't believe that the governance will come and be like. It's easier for them. Everybody's optimizing their own cost function. If we talk about AI and algorithms and stuff like that, every algorithm has a purpose, and theirs is to optimize their chances of keeping the power or satisfying the people that that invest in their campaigns. So if you expect that to come from above, I think there would be. I'm afraid it won't be a very good expectation. I'd say it has to come from us somehow, like doing the education however you can in your day-to-day life. No, AI is not something to be feared. AI is something to be understood, you know? So if you do your due diligence every day, I want to believe that that's a better path than expect it coming from somebody else.
Yeah, I like one thing that you said around being a threat and an opportunity for your business, right? And I think that's totally the case. I actually think that, I think it was Sean before when he was explaining that Uber came about when cell phones were coming out. Actually, the Uber pitch deck, I recommend anyone to look it up online. It's public. you can see that, they're pitching the idea of Uber. They have like a regular phone that was like, only texting, then a BlackBerry, they had an iPhone, right? And the iPhone just came out. So that was the moment, right? And from time to time, there is kind of like this special moment, which is like a new ingredient comes to bear. And that's the moment that is, a threat and opportunity moment where you can jump in and disrupt the new business because that technology is there and you're one of the first to jump on it. So I think AI is in that category.
Hi, Fabio de Paula from Indicator Capital. It's a venture capital. There was a polemic quote about Peter Thiel recently saying, crypto is libertarian, AI is communist. And I don't know if you saw that, but I think he meant, cryptocurrency technology is decentralized, it helps peer-to-peer, it helps to balance the power. AI, is data-centric, it's, as you describe, the GAFA, Googles, Apple, Facebooks, and, the big, large corporations concentrated data power and, the trend to, either what we are talking about, China. So I thought about that, I'm in technology for 30 years. So I thought it's an interesting thought, maybe thinking as underlying technology, blockchain and AI, maybe they can, balance each other. I don't know if you thought about it and if you have comments about that.
Looking at this graph yesterday, and I was reading about this, it's proof of stake or something else. Right now, the blockchain technology is based on this proof of work. And this work takes a lot of energy. So it's a lot of power consumption and a lot of compute. You can't do that kind of compute with your computer at home anymore. It's controlled by like 5% of all there's a very large portion of the people being able nowadays to mine Bitcoin. It's not everybody, it's big companies, like big companies in China with a bunch of ASICs. So I don't know what is truly communist or libertarian there, but if all these blocks can only be assigned by like, whatever, 5% of the people using blockchain, I don't call that democracy, man, honestly. But I'm not in blockchain, so take my comments with a little bit of grain of salt. But talking about AI, if you talk about data, yes. Data is hard to collect at large scale, and that's true. So there's a lot of work, and that's how I got into Keras and some of my friends and building videos and all that, because these technologies, they start very expensive, and most of the time it's like that. It starts like very expensive. Not everybody could have a cell phone the other day, and now it's very common sense. The same thing for AI. I think that we've been doing a very good job since the beginning to be able to share code, to be able to share like the part that is data heavy of the AI pipeline, which is that requires a lot of training, a lot of compute, have the weights, which is essentially like a compressed version of all the knowledge that is extracted from that data, and that you make open, right? So heavy money will always be an advantage, and it is what it is. But I believe that a very large portion of the AI community is aware of that and willing to be more democratic. So not to say that the blockchain community isn't democratic and they are not aware of those issues. That's why they're looking into other proofs. But yeah, I wouldn't say that AI is the bad one in that picture. Not as easily.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the other side of the coin, which is not very much seen in the market, right? We see obviously the big five dominating the AI space due to the amount of data they have, but there's a lot of opportunities out there for small startups. When I was at NVIDIA back in 2015, we were figuring out the strategy of how to foster more AI companies, and we realized that a lot of the innovation was coming from small startups. So I created what today is the NVIDIA's Inception program. It's a program to attract AI startups to build their technology on the top of NVIDIA's architecture. And today they are beyond 2,000 startup partners already. So it shows there's a lot of companies out there trying to solve the problem, right? The challenge is data, as Eder mentioned as well. Access to data is challenging, but many of them have figured out smart ways of doing that. Some start creating the data on their own, so they go out in the field and generate data. Some others create products, the free products that attract people to use those products and generate more data, creating kind of a virtuous circle. So there are opportunities for small companies out there, for sure. The challenge is most of the big guys end up acquiring those small companies. So we need VCs and other investors around helping putting money in those companies so they don't disappear engulfed by one of the big tech giants.
It's good to remember that when the internet started, it was also, considered very decentralized. The little guy, everybody's kind of equal on the internet, everybody's anonymous, so forth. And then, of course, as time goes by, there is consolidation, there's money to be made, and then we end up with, even if the protocol in itself is open and efficient, but a few players tend to acquire more power. So that's why we get the Googles and the Facebooks at the end.
So I just want, Paulo Santana, I work at LinkedIn, I'm engineering manager here. I want to just bring the topic back a little bit to careers. I'm curious because we put data scientists on this big bucket, like everybody is created equal, and we know they really are not. And a lot of the knowledge will be eventually commoditized. A new potential careers will be created, right? So curious about your thoughts around that.
That's a little bit hard to predict what kind of careers will happen once we have more data. Honestly, that's one of the questions that I'm excited to work in AI, which is every time in society we had an idea of what intelligence is, we go there, build that, and then we go and say, no, that's not intelligence, right? Intelligence used to be able to play chess or memorize large databases. No, that's not intelligence. At least for me, partially, part of the task of AI is seeing what is intelligence then? What is so unique to humans? Once we build everything in a computer, all that is left is what it means to be human. But interesting jobs, for instance, will be like remote driver operators, right? So there's companies working on that down in Mountain View. And 5G is coming faster than level 5. So the fast internet is coming faster than the code to drive the car safely and properly. So a couple people might be able to just teleoperate a car and let the AI do the easy part of the job where you're mostly going straight and stuff like that. So I'd say that's something like supervision of very tasks that have like two modes, one that is very simple and boring and the other one that is detailed. So having this shared autonomy, I think that's going to be a big field once we start to get our stuff together in AI.
Yeah, I agree. I believe jobs around data will be critical. We talk a lot about data scientists and the need for data scientists today, but we forget about the data engineer, which is the person who really organizes, structures, labels data, and prepared this data to be fed into an AI system. That's a very important job that didn't exist a few years ago. And now it's becoming as critical as a data scientist. As data scientists today spend 70% of their time just dealing with data. So even data scientists themselves, they need the data engineers to free them out to really get intelligence out of the data. And besides that, on regular jobs, I think we will need people who know how to use AI as a tool, how to augment their own capabilities into their jobs. So I think we'll see more overall the need for people with experience in using AI as a tool. I think that will be very important as well. So it's not going to transform jobs, but will be an important requirement in any jobs of the future.
Yeah, I think getting a data education, right, which there's like a big range of what that can mean, right? Getting some degree of data education is probably a good thing. Will probably open doors at jobs. I think the value of good judgment is increasing. And I think that will play, a bigger role in more and more types of jobs that will happen.
Girardi, with Data Self, Brazilian and American as well. So first of all, I'm very glad to hear what you guys are saying. I'm passionate about AI. I think the future is bright. On the other hand, the short term, when I look at the historical transformations of technology helping humanity, right? They happened slowly, and society was able to catch up with jobs moving from one job to another because things move slowly, right? And technologies pick up very quickly that I think that in the next, 10, 20 years, AI is going to evolve so much that's going to make so many, not of us, right? We are in the Silicon Valley. We are the right place, right time. But there's so many people that are doing very basic jobs, retail, truck drivers, whatever. There's so many people nowadays out there doing things that can be completely mechanical, completely automated, right? There's a lot of people. And I think this transformation is going to be so fast that society is not going to have time to catch up and create enough new jobs that require all the education that we have here to get these people, properly transition into something valuable. And I've been reading, some of the things, we need to think about new business model, economic model, because it's going to happen so fast that society will not have the bandwidth to absorb these people unemployed. I'd like to hear what you guys think about this speed and what your thoughts of how we can get people that are not going to be reading, they're not going to be learning about AI, they're just like simple jobs, and if they get out of a job, what's your thoughts about transitioning them in?
That's a great point, yeah. I usually say, right, the technology evolves exponentially while human beings evolve linearly. So we always have those challenges when those revolutions happen. But as I was mentioning in my first answer, this is the fourth time this happens, right? We have historical data. We should look into that data, to do better now, exactly, right? We should know better. So we should actually, AI can be the problem and the solution as well. We need to figure out ways of using AI to help close this gap, the linear versus exponential curves. And we don't have answers yet, but I completely agree with Edward said. We need to talk more about this problem in the AI community in general. We need to figure out this problem and using AI as a tool to help bridge this gap. But definitely, that's a huge concern right now.
Yeah, so I think that made me remember, your question made me remember of a video that I watched, a documentary back in the days about Alan Moore. And his point was that you have things like, I don't remember what we was talking about exactly, but I can give the example of astrology. I think that in 2008, what you collected then since we started to collect data about stars and stuff like that until 2008, and all the data that we collected in 2008, just that year, it's larger than the entire history. So I think that exponentially grows, right? The amount of information that you have out there, you just can't keep up with as a human. And that's why it's so easy to get baited by fake news. How are you going to get all the facts, all the sides of the story? You hear this candidate believes in this point of view or whatever, and then you go watch a video. No, he just mentioned a very specific point. So it's very complicated. And a very good friend of mine, the main developer of Keras, this neural network library, he says that we need something like Google Maps for our lives to navigate information. You know where you want to get and what kind of information. Somebody has to come and help you navigate the amount of information that there is out there. If you build that or invest in a company doing that, let me know, because I think that that's going to be very big. We were thinking about how to do something like that, but I have no idea. And it is also tricky because if somebody builds a system to help you navigate, and I don't know, what if Google is always sending you to the shorter routes or longer routes unless you pay that other subscription where they'll help you navigate faster? So the same thing that can happen to AI. Once the world is complicated enough that you need third-party help to navigate it, it's tricky. It's tricky. So it's an interesting challenge. Let's call it for now, interesting challenge. But I don't want to be afraid of it. I think it's not useful, first of all, and I think it's important to be aware that we will need to be thinking about things like those, how to navigate information, and in AI as an assistant, not a threat. Yeah.
Right. Fascinating discussion. I don't know if we have enough time or...
I have one question for each one of you, unrelated to AI. Just very briefly, where you're from in Brazil and how long you've been here. Heather.
I'm from São Luís do Maranhão.
Yay!
If you can tell by my Northeast accent.
We can.
Yeah, nice. And yeah, I've been here for 5-6 years. Yes, 5 years since 2013. Yeah. So.
Thank you for being here. Arnaldo.
Yeah, I'm from Rio de Janeiro, and been here in the Silicon Valley for 3 years, since 2015.
That's 2 for Rio, and I've been here for 17 years, since 2001.
Excellent. How about Brazilian talent in Silicon Valley and San Francisco? Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.